Welcome to another episode of Exceptional TV with me, your host, Alex Granger. Today we're speaking to Douglas Kruger, speaker and author on all things expert. Let's get to it. Douglas Kruger, welcome to Exceptional TV. It's good to have you.
Alex, lovely to be chatting with you.
So I must tell you, I was in Kenya a couple of years ago, and I had a problem with my MacBook. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I couldn't for the life
call.
of me. And now I remember, because you have to go into settings, display, arrangement, and mirror.
Yes.
That was the problem.
Right.
Oh my gosh, the whole thing was beaming the mirrored thing on the screen. And I called you, and I said, help! And you gave me advice.
And I was your IT support.
And you were my IT support.
And now you're interviewing me.
See, like, how's that? How do the tables turn that you move from IT support and now you're on my show as a guest? It's really great to have you, Douglas.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And over the years, we've got to know a lot about each other. We walk in the same circles.
Compared cars, compared all sorts of things.
Yes, and I'm glad you actually moved over from BMW to Merc. I don't know what you were doing on the wrong side of...
Yeah, sorry about that.
And in the interim, I moved to Chrysler, so that didn't help. But I'm still a Merc guy at heart.
Absolutely.
Who is Douglas Kruger?
Okay, well, I've been a professional stripper for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's how we met initially, prior to the...
I think Lolly Jackson introduced me to you initially.
That's right, now that you mention it.
Yes.
Now, Alex, like yourself, I'm a professional speaker on the business circuit.
Right.
And I think of myself as kind of in a dual role. I'm an author and speaker.
Right.
Everything that I do is entrepreneurial in nature.
Right.
I help to grow businesses, to grow brands. And I guess my focus is about how to be the top name in whatever it is that you do.
Right.
I've written a couple of books on that.
Not a couple. Couple is two. A couple is two.
Oh, all
this
right.
is your sixth book, seventh book?
It depends how you look at it. It's the sixth one with Penguin. It's the seventh commercial one. It's the eighth one in total. So,
and in the interim, you're writing the next one.
I've got to keep myself busy and out of mischief. Yeah.
But you got a baby now.
I do, yes.
Little Mikey.
Yeah, absolutely.
How old is Mikey now?
Well, and if I fall asleep halfway through this, it's not you, Alex. I find you riveting. It's Mikey who keeps us awake. He is a year and a half, or just shy of a year and a half.
How time flies, eh?
Yeah, no, I must say, I'm loving him. In fact, actually, his little handprint is on the dedication page. Yeah, if you flip a couple of pages in.
Let's find it quickly.
Try to show it to him. And
there's Mikey.
He wasn't interested.
Mikey.
I'll read it to him when he's older.
When he's older, he'll look back and say, is that me, Dad? Was that really me? But it's awesome because, you're creating a legacy for him and literally passing the baton. And I think in our industry, it's not an easy thing to do. You can't, I'm a professional speaker, my son will be a professional speaker.
No, absolutely.
And he might have his own, but my son is involved in music. He doesn't want to speak. In fact, he hardly speaks. He's such a quiet guy. He doesn't even speak to me much. So I don't think it's going to be a professional
Mine either,
speaker.
but that's because he doesn't have words yet.
Yeah. No. Yours is still an empty canvas.
He can say mine.
Mine. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
He's
and why. Eventually you're going to know how to say why.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you author, you speak. Do you do any training?
I do a little bit here and there. From time to time, I'm asked to do coaching in presentation skills, that kind of thing. I was fortunate enough to win the Toastmasters Southern African Speaking Championships a number of times. Yeah. Yes. And it's not something that I advertise, but I get asked to do it from time to time, and it's good fun.
But also, from a professional speaking point of view, you are certified
speaking professional as of a little while ago.
CSP. That was actually was at the speakers. I was actually emceeing the speakers.
Yes, that's
convention
right.
when you were awarded that. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
congratulations on that. And it's really something that most speakers aspire to get to. So one day I'll be great. Who knows? And that's fantastic. And I know you also have been on various radio shows as a guest, and sometimes you'd anchor a show. Part of your passion? Would you ever do your own thing and have your own radio?
Absolutely. I actually tried to do that at one stage.
Because you got that voice. I've got the face for TV.
Thank you very much, Alex. Tune in next week for the next edition of...
Have you ever done voiceovers?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually tried many years ago to do a bit of serious radio work and ended up doing late nights and early mornings on Talk Radio 702. The lack of sleep was killing me. And that was really before the launch of the full-time professional speaking career. But yeah, no, I do a fair amount of radio work, and most of it is, again, talking about those principles, about how to be the top name in your industry. And hopefully it's kind of walking my talk, because one of the things that I encourage people to do is to find platforms and to get out there into the public consciousness. Yeah,
that's great, because you're literally coaching people on the airwaves, and this is another platform that allows you to do that. So this is your latest book?
That's the new one.
Is this my copy?
Alex, that is your copy. You can hold on to it.
Did you bring a pen?
I will find a pen.
We will have to do this.
We'll do that.
You know what, we'll do it as an Insta story, because I've been told Insta story is the way to go.
Well, then we better do it as an Insta story.
IGTV. Like, let me tell you, I'm so Gen X. I'm struggling with all this new technology. I thought I was savvy. I'm pretty good at designing fantastic presentations. Yeah. But man, when it comes to just marketing myself using social media, I still do the traditional post an image and do a little motivational little thingy, hashtag exceptionally flawsome.
I tell you what, I really believe it's about us, not the technology. I mean, I'm no good at it either. I've been learning my way around YouTube on a more serious level recently, and trying to do sort of a daily motivational video. And the technical side of things absolutely baffles me. But I think what really matters is the personality and the content that we create.
That's it.
You know, the tech is going to change all the time, so what?
But there's different ways of reaching different people. And young people now, it's these Insta stories and Facebook stories. Like, if you just put a normal post, they don't seem to look. Even if you talk about, like, I've recently engaged with a company, and I know we're digressing, on really creating fantastic presentation slides, because you know, you've spoken about it, how to make your point without PowerPoint, and the death by PowerPoint thing.
All the things people typically do wrong.
But we know as speakers that images and imagery
done right
does create a memorable experience, and also helps from a sensory point of view for you to remember the content. And I recently revamped one of my top keynote that I do, called The Last Maverick, and I engaged with a company. I mean, charged me a lot of money, but I did it, and they delivered yesterday, and it is quite something. It's
a whole different level.
It's you know, it's just because what you want to do is, when you're watching a presentation, the brain needs to remain stimulated. And sometimes the voice can get monotonous. So imagery, and I mean, I have clients who say to me, "Can you please send us your presentation?" Sure. Because all you're going to get is pictures and one word, ambition.
Absolutely. It's not going to tell you terribly
much. It means nothing to you, and I don't have a script in my head. So, but anyway, I was digressing. Let's talk about the book. What makes them great? 50 ways to become the industry leader.
Always 50 ways.
You've already said the book is roughly about how to become the best in whatever space.
So this is with, of the various books I've done with Penguin, the first one was how to be the expert in whatever you do. This one kind of goes further and says, how do you become the icon in whatever you do? So at the kind of level where, when a person thinks of an industry, your name springs to mind. Like, if we think bodybuilding, we think Schwarzenegger. If we think horror, we think Stephen King. That sort of thing. So what do those personalities, those characters, those notorieties do differently? And a lot of it is actually fairly counterintuitive, because when we tend to think of experts and icons, the first thing our mind goes to is, say, the highest level of education. Like, they have more degrees, more qualifications. It's not necessarily always the case. There's definitely a sort of a level of entry in terms of qualifications. But to become the Branson of business, the Clarkson of cars, the Schwarzenegger of bodybuilding, you often find that it's not the most qualified person. There's something else going on.
So what is that something else?
Well, that the entire book is about how to answer that. But the very quick version of the answer is, I often say that experts exist at the intersection of three major qualities. And unless you have all three of them working together, you disqualify yourself. And the three are knowledge, which you have to have enough of. So you have to be sufficiently qualified. Then the next one that people tend to miss, which is personality. To be a Nigella Lawson, an Elon Musk,
Can we stop
a Jeremy Clarkson.
This Nigella Lawson chick. You've been a fan for years.
Me.
I've seen you posting. I've always said to myself, what does Vanessa say about
Well, Vanessa and I do watch the Nigella show together, but for completely different reasons.
Of course, she's watching it for the food and the recipes. You're interested in the dish that's dishing the food.
The dish. Yes. But so it's the personality around what you do.
Knowledge, personality.
And publicity is the third one.
Publicity.
Jumping back to that second one, there is so much around that. Being a personality implies, like we were saying earlier about the radio interviews, you've got to be seen in public. You've got to be on forums. You've got to speak in public. You've got to be a face and a voice in the public consciousness. And half of the book is about how you do that. How do you get out there, be seen, be heard, and become synonymous with a thing?
So tell me, because this sounds close to becoming a thought leader, becoming a guru.
Very much so.
And I know there are various levels: amateur, professional, guru, iconic,
yes,
and thought leader. I don't know whether thought leader is the most.
I tend to put iconic as sort of the top one, and thought leader is kind of going toward the top.
Toward that. So, and this obviously kind of speaks to that, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
Because I always wondered to myself, can a thought leader say that they're a thought leader, or do you become a thought leader?
That's an interesting one. In the first book on expert positioning, I say one of the weird ironies is that you can't call yourself an expert. Like an expert or an icon is a kind of a tag that others give to you.
It's like saying I'm humble.
When you give it to yourself, it's a little sad.
It's like, I'm so humble.
Yes.
I'm really humble, and no.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
People must say that you are.
Yeah. In fact, I've got a whole chapter in here about some of the humorous titles that people give themselves, especially on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it's, global enablement, You're like, dude, you're a salesperson. It's like so, you have to peg yourself at the right level.
That's right.
But going too high, too much in the way of, sort of over the top, it actually ends up looking a little comical.
Yeah.
Ultimately, an expert or an icon is something that others bestow upon you.
That's right.
Based on a body of work.
What are the small steps one can take towards getting to this iconic level?
Okay, so the first thing that I say is do not be afraid. Wherever you are, you can start to grow this idea of being a thought leader and expert by teaching people who know a little bit less than you.
Okay.
So you do not have to be the greatest in the world before you can start to share through the media, through articles, through books. You need only know a little more than others to start leading them forward.
Okay.
And as you learn, you grow. And I think one of the mistakes people make, particularly when they're very young and starting out, is trying to be the globally dominant expert at everything. I drive a more expensive car, have a bigger house, I've turned around 50 multinational companies, and I'm there. And the guy's like 22 years old. Come on. So a little bit of humility can go a long way.
Absolutely.
So you operate at the level of expertise where you are and continue to grow it.
Yeah.
And that's, it's fairly simple, but it takes a lot of the pressure off a young aspiring expert to say you don't have to be king of the world at everything.
Yeah.
Be good at what you're good at and grow from there.
So let's talk business now. Cool. Organizations and branding.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've read many organizations who position themselves as the leading organization when it comes to
Yes.
the biggest blah 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 blah. And in fact, I've even heard speakers who will be like, the number
I think our
one
industry is replete with that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
ranked
even
the number one in the world.
Yeah,
by himself.
By himself, yes. I mean, even American speakers do that. I mean, and some that I'm very fond of will say number one motivational speaker in the world, but they're like 7 of them all saying the same thing. Like,
come on.
So who is it really? Can I decide? But from a business point of view and an organizational point of view, from a branding, because I haven't read your book yet. Do you address how an organization can become iconic?
Yeah, the first expert positioning book is kind of broader and more malleable in the sense that it's businesses, brands, and so forth.
Douglas with these words. Malleable.
Look at me, malleable.
Malleable. Where's my phone? I have to find the meaning of malleable.
You can kind of stretch it. It's plasticky.
Oh, my phone's
stretchy.
Producer. She's doing the story.
So the first book is stretchier than the second one.
Malleable.
Yeah, this one is much more about individuals. But speaking to that idea, I find that both businesses and individual brands tend to be too self-referential.
Okay.
It's much more powerful to refer to the client and how you can make their lives better.
Okay.
And one of the sort of themes that I bang on about in this one is I say the identity of the person following you is what matters to them. Right. Jumping back to the Nigella one. Yeah. So she gave an interview with Time magazine once, and it was a video format interview. And she talks about her sense of the sort of ideal that she creates. And she says when she was very young, she had this picture in mind of an Italian domestic goddess.
Right.
And she's not Italian. I mean, she's as English as you could possibly hope to get. But when you watch her show, you can see that coming through. That's the kind of picture she has in her mind, and that's what she creates in her show. What that does is it helps the fans and followers of her show to see how they can be that. Now, that's what I kind of go on about, where I say, instead of saying, we are Africa's greatest, we are the world's greatest, you say, how can you be who you want to be as a result of my leadership. And I think that's the key to the thing. So you're showing people how to become the best version of themselves, or a picture of themselves that they find attractive. And there you go from saying, I am the greatest, to you could be the greatest. And I think that's quite powerful.
So I don't know if it's an issue, because I've heard this statement.
Topical creams. It'll go away within 2-3 days. Yeah.
This issue of being the best version of yourself. My first episode was with John Sane, who I think you know.
Yes.
And he also spoke about being the best version of yourself. And I don't know whether people get to grips with that, whether, okay, I'm sitting here, I've got visions. I've got visions in me. I'm living with visions. You know what I'm saying?
Psychologically damaged.
I can think, it's a pie in the
Douglas
sky.
is in here with us.
Right, I'm in here.
Yeah.
But what does it practically mean to become the best version of yourself?
I think it really just means
what is it?
Understanding what you have potential for, what you enjoy, and letting your light shine.
Can you create versions?
No, you know what? I don't think. I think the problem here is we're talking about different versions, and that's not quite what we're getting at.
Okay.
I kind of go with more the sort of the biblical principle of going, let your light shine.
Right.
Whoever or whatever you are, do that well. Do that with excellence.
Okay.
It's one of the things I'd like to sort of think that I will imbue in my little guy when he grows up. I don't care what he does for a living, but I want him to be a great one of those.
Yeah.
And not just because it's kind of a show-off thing, but because that's rewarding for him. You know, whatever it is that you pursue, if you want to be a cartoonist, a chiropractor, a skateboarder, be a great one. Because that challenges you to take it seriously, to give of your best, to let your light shine. And I think that's possibly the healthy interpretation of that idea.
Let's have a word of prayer right now.
Right, excellent. Yes. Who are we praying to just need to check in advance.
Yes, let's not go there. There's too many gods out there, aren't there? Let's talk about innovation briefly. Because obviously, is there merit in saying that for you to become iconic, you have to constantly innovate?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you why. One of the ideas, and it's from a US speaker I quoted named Joe Calloway, is he talks about becoming a category of one, which is to say there's nothing else like you. You are without peer in your industry. I love that idea, but it is an immensely challenging concept, particularly from the perspective of our own fear. Because when we get into any industry, our heart's desire is to fit in and look like the rest of that industry. That's very human and very natural. It's also a good way to start because it gets you credibility. You do look like the rest of the horizon. However, it's also a good way to stay at a mid-level in your industry and not to excel. To begin to excel, you actually have to have the courage of your own convictions to say, I'm going to stand out by design, different on purpose. And the idea of innovation then is to say, all right, how do we become different on purpose? That was really the theme of the previous book, which is the one on rule breaking, which is, it kind of takes the idea, what are the norms? What are the way things are always done? What's the flavor in your industry? Can you do something different? And what I try and do there is to provide specific starting points for how to look at that. So it's not kind of a long and comprehensive system, a single idea of how you innovate through an organization. It's all the starting points for thinking about it, questions you can ask in order to see your world differently.
Is there a space for why to do things differently as opposed to just how? Does that feed into?
Yes.
I mean, if you think of Simon Sinek's,
and you're dead right. And in fact, there are also reasons why not to do things differently. So one of the first things that I emphasize in that book is I say I am not an anarchist. I am not a hippie. I'm not just here to break all the rules. Some rules are there because they are.
They're your rules.
Break them.
Break them.
Yes.
50 ways to smash the silos.
Yeah. Some rules and some norms are there because they have been tested by time. Some are only there because no one has ever questioned them. They have been handed down through time and they've just become invisible to us. We don't even notice them anymore.
Sometimes we've just embraced them because they've been there and we think...
Exactly that. They get passed on generation to generation. They become invisible. Example that I use of that one is the way public schools are run. There are so many similarities between the way a Industrial Revolution era factory used to work and our schools today. And I go into the similarities one by one. And you look at that and you go, well, why do our schools work that way? The answer is just because they always have.
They always have. Yeah. I did some work in Botswana recently, in fact, a few years ago, and so they run TVET colleges, and they call them brigades. And I promise you, it was the most fascinating thing. You walk into a TVET college, and you find, because they do all the dressmaking, painting, some of these more technical, what do you call them? The technical stuff, trades and stuff like that. And one of the ladies I was talking to there, she teaches on dressmaking. And I was asking her, so tell me your story. How did you become a lecturer or teacher in this stuff? She says, well, actually, I learned here. I did my dressmaking in this very facility.
Yes.
I was taught in this very room. And I said, she really, show me the designs. And the designs are the same. The designs she's teaching are the designs she learned over 20 years ago.
There you go.
In the
and that's
old
how that
format
works.
and how technology has moved, and they have moved with it.
Yeah.
And that, like you're saying, fascinated me, because she just like for the rest of her life, she's going to be teaching the same stuff she taught. She was taught 20 years ago.
And it just becomes invisible, and we pass it on.
And we just pass it on.
In fact, linking that to the new book, I've got a chapter there that says intentionally don't benchmark locally, because it becomes intellectually lazy. We look at the people immediately around us.
Oh, you got to say that again.
It's intellectually lazy to benchmark locally.
Right.
And it's also increasingly an invalid way of understanding ourselves.
Right.
Because, I mean, take a simple example. Let's say, for instance, you do something in electrics or electronics or plumbing, and you go and you do something within a private house. Mm-hmm. Now, the person living in that house is not comparing you to someone in Florida or Rudaput. They have access to YouTube. They're comparing you to the latest things being done in California or London or, Abu Dhabi or whatever the case might be. And in any industry, that is increasingly the case. We must be up to speed with what is at the forefront, wherever that may be geographically.
That's amazing. Last question. Personally, are you still squatting?
Yes. Why, thank you. Can't you tell, Alex? Yeah, absolutely.
Are you benchmarking internationally?
I come up against genetics on that one, I'm afraid, yeah. I was always the skinny kid at school, so I think I've pushed it as far as I can go.
Are you crazy? So we're on set with Douglas Kruger, speaker, innovator, author, in fact, author of his latest book, What Makes Them Great, 50 Ways to Become the Industry Leader. 3 last things.
Yeah.
Share with our audience nuggets, calls to action based on your book.
Alrighty, so the very first thing is don't be afraid of public opinion. Start your public career and grow it. Right. That might mean a simple thing like opening a YouTube channel, writing an article, speaking in public. It does come with fear. It doesn't matter. We all feel fear. Get over the fear, start to learn and to grow.
Cool.
Don't save it for later years.
Okay.
The next one, based on the similar sort of idea, be a constant producer. The more you produce, the more you create, the more you put out into the world, the more you become synonymous with that thing.
Right.
And the final one is the more focused that can be, the better for you. Fantastic. You don't have to be the broad spectrum expert at everything. Pick one thing, something you love, something you're passionate about. Get known for that. Make that your space.
Fantastic. Douglas, thank you very much for being on set with us.
Always a pleasure, Alex.
It's really great having you here. There you have it, guys. The author of this fantastic book, Douglas Kruger, speaker and author, and all things fantastic. Do the things that need to be done. From me, Alex Granger, I'm out.